Good afternoon, this is Kyle. We are going to wait just a few more minutes and get started here momentarily. Thanks for everyone who is here, and we will start in about 60 seconds. All right, afternoon, everybody. This again is Kyle Osborne. Jesse is not able to be with us to host, so I get to perform both roles today, which is exciting. So I'll be kind of walking us through some of the housekeeping things and just kind of letting you know if you have a question or if there's a follow-up resource that you would like to have for your classroom. Please let me know. This is our last webinar for the year. So it's been a great privilege. Vicki Vermeer out of Dordt College, and then myself, TS Institute, Iowa Council. It's been a great partnership with the council and the Center for Economic Education in the state of Iowa. It's been a great honor to really share best practices and different resources all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. And we've been able to do that for free for you as teachers. And so it's been a great privilege for us. So this is our last webinar, and we hope that these webinars have been helpful for you. A couple housekeeping things. If there are different questions that you have along the way, please send them to us. Or if you are a recording listener, go ahead and you can send me an email at kyle.osborne, OSBORNE @tsinstitute.org. So you can send those my way after the presentation. If you're listening to the recording, or if you're currently on, you can see the housekeeping. Just go ahead and throw those in the chat box and we will get those taken care of. So this is me. It's been a privilege of mine to work here at TS Institute for the last 7.5 years or so. And we became the Iowa Council, another hat that we wear, basically representing economic and financial literacy education for the last 3.5 years or so. So it's been a great privilege for us working with the Department of Education and just with different councils and centers across the United States to provide good, free, low-cost resources for teachers here in Iowa. This webinar is as part 2. We'll get to the standards here real quickly, but this is part 2. There's just too many at the 9th through 12th grade level, so I'll show you these. So one of the things I like to do is show you as teachers, here are the 8th grade standards. So if you're like, man, I'm a 9th grade teacher, I'm a 12th grade teacher, a 10th grade teacher, what are my students, where are they at knowledge-wise, or where should they be at? So these are the 8th grade standards, and then the 9th through 12th grade on the right side. And so as you can see, they're building out quite a bit more around financial and career goals. We want to see these students actually graduate high school with some plans, with some goals, with some motivation, if you will. Want to make them or see them succeed, and then the rest kind of are littered out through. So the part 1 is what we covered, is the first 5 standards, and then today we're going to cover the next 7. So I'm going to just show you that slide, and then part 2 is today. We're really going to hit on credit and debt, savings, long-term investments, and then risk management. So I've had some teachers ask me, where are these? You can find them under the financial literacy standards for the state of Iowa. I have found that they're quite a bit easier if you go into the Iowa Core Social Studies standards. What that's going to do is going to show you the econ standards alongside the financial literacy, alongside just the social studies in general. So I think it's more aesthetically pleasing to me, but everybody has their own opinion on that. But I would encourage you to, after this, go ahead and click on that link. You'll see what I mean. It's a great resource. Scroll down to 9 through 12, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Couple things I want you to be thinking about. So if you're looking for grants, the top link there is a Discover grant. So Discover as in Discover Card. They have a great grant process where you can apply, tell them what you want to buy, tell them what you want to do in your classroom. Just a great resource for you. A couple conference resources coming up is in June 14th, the Iowa Jumpstart Conference. I want to invite you to that. I know Vicki and I have been a part of that. It's just a great, not only just a way for you to rub shoulders with other colleagues, other teachers, but just to get some good resources and some out-of-the-box thinking. The second conference that I'm referencing there, the Jumpstart Conference too is the Iowa one. The Iowa Jumpstart Conference usually gives out anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 full ride conference scholarships to the National Jumpstart. So I want to encourage you, if you come to the Iowa one, you have a pretty good probability of getting a scholarship for the national one. Moving to the best practices, if you have not been to that, a lot goes into that conference. This one usually is in the Des Moines area. And so if you're from around that area, it's a great resource for you. And that's going to be June 20 through 21. I'll be presenting there. So we'll be presenting some different resources at that conference. Hope to see you there. I'm going to jump into our resources. We have about 20 minutes or so left of our time together. A couple best practices I like to say is, so you got your school year starting, or your second semester, your second try is starting, and you're a little bit worn out, or you're a little bit like, man, I got just 2 more tries left. I want to encourage you to grab your best material. Do that first. I'm borrowing this from a teacher friend of mine, and I really love it. So your best lesson first, make it memorable and make it interactive. So get those students up, get somebody who comes in and actually presents, or maybe you might do like a mini financial fair in your room, but make it memorable and do that. Once the students get your passion for the topic, the rest of the semester try will just go that much better. So we're jumping right in. This would be number 6 standard, but the first standard we're going to cover today is around analyzing credit and debt levels. So analyze the cost and benefits of different types of credit and debt. So the challenge with this standard is that many of your students aren't particularly in debt when it comes to like their credit report. And so they're going to look at this as kind of deer in the headlights. And so some of these lessons that I've put on here, specifically with the Take Charge lesson, this is more of an introduction to credit. You want to give them a baseline understanding of these are the different types of credit. So it could be consumer, it could be secure, it could be unsecure. And so just giving your students a base understanding of that, and you might be thinking, well, that's already boring right there. So I would encourage you to bring something tangible for them to hold, and maybe separate the room out. So you might have everybody stand up and say, okay, if you're holding a picture that is a car or a house, go to the left side of the room. You are secured debt. If you're holding a credit card or some jeans, this is unsecured types of debt. And so you want them to actually see the divide. You want them to definitively see, oh, this is a different type of credit. It's kind of like water and oil. As soon as they see the differences, it'll start making more sense as you get into the book smarts, if you will, of it. And so I want to encourage you, start out with your credit and your debt. as basic as you can. Start out with secure and unsecure. The Take Charge lesson will give you some basics into that, but I want to encourage you to do some tangible things where they're actually looking at that. Also underneath the Take Charge lesson, as they're looking into that, you want to also connect a credit has a lot to do with and is connected with debt. And so I've in the past had students write down all the good things about themselves, write down like a financial resume, but also write down some things that they would be willing to share that are not so great about themselves. Maybe they like to talk a lot, or maybe they snore at night, or things like that. And then as they write those down, they actually see that there's pros and cons. In the same way on the credit report, that also shows that. So if you're good with money, it's going to show that. If you're not good with money, it's going to show that. So I want to encourage, find some creative ways. Those are just a couple ideas for you. On the picture the logo to the right, the top right, the high school financial planning. This is actually from NEFI. There is lots and lots of great examples of debt in this lesson. So it's a workbook. You can order it. It's free. We'll reference it here in a little bit too. But what the students are actually going to see is, if I buy a stereo, that could go on a credit card. If I buy a car, that's an auto loan. If I buy a boat, that would be a type of secure debt. And so the students are actually seeing the different debt types, but they're also seeing how the interest rate changes. So you're like, man, why is my credit card interest rate 21%? And how come my home rate is like 4%? Well, it's fixed. There's a fixed payment with your house, but it's also a lower rate, and it's actually backed by security or an asset. And so the students are actually seeing, oh, okay, so that's a great lesson or a great example with the high school financial planning program. The NGPF, there's 2 lessons there. The first one is connected, why you need credit. I know if you're a Dave Ramsey fan, excuse me, he's a huge fan of no debt is good debt. So basically, Dave has his own idea of credit and those types of things. But what I really like about this lesson is it actually helps students connect the dots of, oh my goodness, if I don't have credit, can I buy a house? Well, yes, you can if you have cash, but in the majority of our lives, we have to borrow. And so it actually gives a good case for why do you need credit and what type of credit would be good. The second lesson under the Next Gen Personal Finance is understanding loans. And so it actually breaks out what is the difference between a car. It's very similar to the high school financial planning, car loan, house mortgage, those types of things. What is a HELOC even? Kind of gets into that. And so I would highly encourage you to give your students a scenario. And if you need ideas or like a template, I can email you. But if you're looking for your students to really get engaged, give them a real life scenario. You are a dad that works 2 jobs or 1 job. You're married. You have a child on the way. You have car debt. You have a house debt. You have student loans of $30,000. Here are the payments. And just let the students navigate. Give them a scenario based. And so I'd encourage you to consider that. The Credit Karma, that's just a great place to find. You can also go to bankrate.com. Credit Karma has some cool calculators that are a little bit unique. One's an amortization schedule, so you actually get to see principal, interest, total payment. And the students say, whoa, if I bought a car and it takes me 6 years to pay this off, I'm going to pay how much for that car? And it's a real eye-opener for your students. The bank image, there's no hyperlink there. The rest of them have a hyperlink, but the bank image is, I would really highly encourage your students to go into a bank and sit down with a loan officer and actually just walk through the process of buying a house for the first, a mock house. Have the students tell the banker what they're doing, but have them walk through the process. It will open their eyes significantly. So just have them do that. Have them be an outside experience, outside assignment. The last image is the payback. It's a simulation on college, actually preparing for college, paying back college debt, return on investment, those types of things. Great examples there. So we're going to move along here. So analyzing credit and debt levels. So the interesting thing about these standards is that there's a little bit of interpretation. So I want to give a caveat for that. So as you look at summarizing a borrower's rights and responsibilities, a lot of times your students are like, what the heck does that mean? Really what that means is the small print in the contract that you're actually signing. So if a student is, if you're looking at different credit card offers, which in the past, I've actually just brought in mail or had different colleagues from work say, hey, could you bring in that application for the credit card or for that whatever type of debt, and can I use that in my class? So I'll like marker, like black off the name, and then we'll just look at the actual offer. Is this a good offer? Is this a poor offer? The Take Charge today has some great examples of that. There's an option where students can actually get 3 credit cards, but there's different terms. There's different situation related to interest and payback and those types of things, or one's got an annual fee. And that all directly ties back to the borrower rights and responsibility. Once you sign that contract, that's what you're responsible for. Yes, there's predatory types of things like payday lenders. I don't have that on here, but that's also another option for you, is bring in 3 or 4 different payday lenders. And it could be somebody from Walmart and the Money Center. It could be a title loan company, or it could be a payday lender. Have them come in and talk about what a person is responsible for, and actually have the students take notes and say, man, I can't believe what the responsibility is of me as a person who's going to get, $1,000 borrowed. So the students actually get to see that. Or you could even say, hey, each of you are going to be required to rent your desk, kind of give them a scenario of their own personal, maybe make your classroom a mini economy where they're renting their desk. And if they don't, then they have to pay you extra money, late fees, those types of things. So that's where it gets into responsibility. If somebody is irresponsible, there's more fees. That's really what this standard is about, helping the students say that their behavior is connected to the contract that they signed. And if they don't meet those agreements, then there's consequences. I mean, very similar to if they're late for school or your class, there's consequences, right? So just that, I would say, think of it that way. With the Next Gen Personal Finance, that's also a great lesson on understanding the different types of loans. They also have a fine print lesson, which I really like. So the students actually have to take the time to look at the fine print and actually say, man, is this really something I want to commit to? I had a great, we a couple days ago, we did a STEM night at a local middle school, and we had the students say, okay, well, if you take this loan that you're wanting to buy this motorcycle for, you have to pay extra money. And the student looks at me like, no way do I want to do that. And so he understood his rights and responsibilities, right? And so as students actually see exactly what they're signing up for, that's why I think most of America is in trouble, is they don't actually know what they're signing up for. So even just putting your students in a scenario where you're like, hey, I'll give you this, and then I'll give you a candy bar if you do your homework this week, but maybe putting the fine print on the board and say, but look at the board for the fine print. Some of them are going to look at it, some are not. And your fine print on the board might be, only if you call me Mr. Osborne, whatever. You can say something goofy, but if your students do that, then they get the reward. If they don't, then they might be frustrated. Well, I didn't see the board, I didn't look at it, and there's excuses, right? And that's the tie-in to the standard, is making sure they understand all of it. So the CFPB and the Attorney General, as those are two really just connected consumer rights. So if you haven't looked at those, you might even give your students a scenario and have them use the Attorney General. What would they do if somebody took advantage of them, elder abuse, or took advantage of them from a financial standpoint? Give them a scenario and have them research. How would they reach out to the Consumer Federation for Protection Bureau? How would they recover from those losses? So the last image is the Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. That is a great video on students that are graduating from college and just realizing, oh my goodness, I am in extreme debt. How am I going to recover from this? perfect, perfect, perfect example of borrower rights and responsibilities. Students are getting out of school. They can't afford their debt. They're wanting to get out of it. But because of the contract, they didn't understand what they were signing up for. Perfect example of borrower rights and responsibilities. So this one is would be a kind of an introduction to the next standard. And so I wanted to give you a quick quote from Andy Stanley. Everybody ends up somewhere in life, but few people end up somewhere on purpose. Those are the ones with vision. So if you look at the top, investigate strategies to avoid and manage debt effectively. If I could just give you 2 words that would encourage your students from a life perspective. So I'm 35. The 2 words that I think would have really helped me is vision and a plan. I had no clue what life was going to look like. And part of, vision's 2020, right? Or catch 22, if you will. Sometimes you have vision when you're further down the road. You can actually see, man, I wish I would have known this. But do you really care about it when you need to know it? The just-in-time education kind of approach. So helping your students catch a vision of where they want to be. I want to be debt-free. I want to have a car. I want to buy my first car with cash when I'm 22. I want to have my first job that I love. I want to work a couple jobs that I hate. Or, nobody really says that, but like I want to work a couple jobs that develop my character, whatever you want to. Some of them, I believe, need to have some challenge. Encourage your students to really, if you could have challenge, pursue that, because that a challenge really helps you become the person that you will become, right? And then plan. This Harvard study is compelling to me because my wife and I, we sat down when we were just married and we wrote down 3 goals. The first one was let's get out of debt. Second one, let's save. And the third one is let's be on the same page, AKA let's stop fighting about money. And so I want to just encourage you, if you can give your students some fodder to have a vision for their future and write down some goals or have a plan, they will be better off than so many people that I meet. I teach classes here in the Southwest Iowa area, and I ask people the question, how many of you have a goal or have some idea of where you want to go? I'll have 1 person out of a room of 30. Most people know what they don't want to do. Very few people know where they want to go. So I want to encourage you, if you can build that into your students early, huge help to them. Investigating strategy. So I'm going to go quickly here. So this one is how do you avoid and manage debt? Sometimes you have to get into debt to know how to manage it. So the first lesson in the Take Charge is a managing money component, just helping them understand, are they a saver? Are they a spender? How are they going to manage their money? The second lesson of the Take Charge is a lesson on major expenses. Should I lease my vehicle? Should I buy my vehicle? Should I buy a house? Should I rent an apartment? Should I rent a house? Having your students kind of process through that. Can I afford the debt? Does it match up? I mean, I would even encourage you at this point to have your students go into a banker and talk about the loan to value. What is loan to value? And then also, what is your debt to income ratio? As students kind of start to see that and like, oh my goodness, I can't afford a house. But a lot of times they get mad at bankers because they want to buy a house, but they make $2,000 and their house payment's going to be $1,000. You can't buy a house at 50% loan to income. So just helping them understand that. You want to be at the 20 to 30%. Ramsey would say 20. Bankers would let you go up to 33. So just good rules of thumb. The Next Gen Personal Finance, this is a phenomenal lesson on debt management. You're given scenarios, the students kind of process through that. So I would encourage you to check that out. The high school financial planning, this is also a great example of just money management. It's a money management unit that actually walks your students through their goals and where they want to go. So it integrates their values and goals and where they want to go related to the way that they want to manage money. This picture of these 2 people talking, have them interview somebody who's gone through life and how do they navigate debt? How do they avoid? Maybe they wish they would have done something different. get them talking about it. I find that most people don't even talk about it. If you can get people talking, they'll tell you, and you'll learn so much because it's a personal testimony. The far right or the far left picture, the debt snowball. This is a great article. Have your students read, talk about the pros and cons of paying off something small and then building that payment to getting rid of your debt. It'd be a quick article. I bet you could do this as like a class, like a one classroom type of thing. The Your Life, Your Money by hosted by Donald Faison. Phenomenal case study on about 5 or 6, maybe 7 different people who have went through school, got out, and like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have known this is what my debt load is going to be. Some of them are in credit card debt, some are in student loan debt, some are buying, can't buy a house. It's just a great example. So as you walk through those case studies, you can pause the video, have a little group discussion. What would you do? What would you recommend? What would you counsel? What would you coach? Those types of things. The far right, bottom right, is the money habitudes. This one is connected with a person's behavior. So I would almost actually start with this resource at the onset of this unit. And so if somebody knows that their money habit, if you will, is to spend, or maybe they're really a generous or a fun-loving type of person, that habit or the way that they manage their money is going to be far harder than somebody who's like a saver. So if they know their habits and their personality, they can have fun, but they need more boundaries. So I'm a fun-loving type of person. I like to spend money, and so I have to have guardrails. I have to have boundaries. So I can have a lot of fun, but each month I can have a lot of fun with $30. I just know that's what I got. It's my boundary. I have a lot of fun with it, and then once it's gone, it's gone. But for us fun people, if you will, spenders, if we don't have boundaries, we're in trouble. So integrating some of those strategies and just knowing your behavior, knowing your propensity to either live one way or the other, will help your students in the long run. Evaluate short-term savings goals. So the top left is a take charge lesson. This one is particularly centered around savings goals and introducing goals and values. So similar to a previous lesson, this one actually dives into what are some of the values that you have. So I want to encourage students that when you're looking for a financial institution, consider it like you're dating them. I know it sounds super awkward and weird, but you're actually entrusting them with your money, and they're entrusting you with their services and products. Take the time, get to know them. Don't just take the first bank or credit union you find a good match. The NGPF lesson is save early, save often. I can't stress this enough. Most people say, well, I'll save someday when I can afford it. I would encourage you, start saving $1. That behavior of saving $1 will forever change you. I had a gentleman laugh at me because I started saving $1 when my wife and I sat down and tried to change our financial future. Well, that $1 changed everything for us. Just that little bit by little bit by little bit. Have different speakers come in, different banks, credit unions, have them come in and say, hey, here's the different tools, have them pitch it. Or on the flip side of that, on the bottom left, the showdown, I actually would encourage you to grab your students, put it in groups of 2 or 3, and then have them do some research. Do some research on banks or credit unions around the area, what they offer, money market, CD. This is a great way for them to actually learn what the savings tools are that are out there, the products and services. And they can do a budget. I think that's kind of the traditional approach, but I really like the bank showdown. So then the students actually present and say, our bank is the best because we have the best rates on interest related to savings. We also have the best rates in relation to loans. So that's just a great, have them present or have them put together a PowerPoint, whatever. Or you can have them do, I'll get to this on the last slide. There's a Powtoons, you can do like an animation slide for that. So on the bottom right, this is, you'll click on the link. There's a financial services, another great tool just to kind of discover the different products and services that are out there. Get them to think about like, what are these products and services out there and how do they serve my best interest, and not just getting an institution that's closest to your home or whatever. Just get them to think some of those problem solving skills. we're going to have to fly through this last couple. So all of these are related to investments. I'm going to go really quick. The Take Charge is Introduction to Investments. I really like the compound interest calculator to the bottom left of it. The students can actually put in their age, how much they want to save, $20, and actually see the interest in relation to the principal, the money that they put in. A great tool. The stock market game starts up. There's wild card sessions. Great exercise. If you haven't checked into that, please check it. Totally free. I created a Prezi. You can click on that. It's a great introduction to investments. The high school financial planning, there is basically an introduction to investments and just letting students know that it isn't just stocks, but there's bonds and there's ETFs and there's all kinds of different options. So I would even encourage you, so the stock market picture, have them track a couple stocks, get used to it, see how the market works a little bit, and just get them interested that way. The NGPF is a lesson connected with the stack, so the bottom two pictures are connected. The lesson is from NGPF, but the stacks is actually a simulation related to students are getting money on a time basis, and then as they are accruing money, they can invest it in commodities, they can invest it in bonds and those types of things. So those are some great resources there. Our last slide for the day is related, actually I lied, the second from last is justifying reasons for various forms of insurance. So real quickly, the NGPF, the Take Charge Today, and the high school financial planning, those are all great lessons helping the students see that when they are paying a premium, they're actually deferring risk, saying, I don't want to take that risk. Great lessons on that. I have the fly swatter in there because it's a great way to teach terminology. So as students are discovering these words, they're like, oh man, I don't know these words. But if you do it in a fun game, I write all the words on the board. I give a definition. I break them into two different groups, and then I have them decide what the term is. So I'll read the definition. The two groups of students can either work together as a group. They run up to the board, swat the term. It's a great, fun, interactive way to get them up. Slapping terms, working as a group, teamwork, and I read the definition. So it's super simple that way. And then this is a great question. Is it always true that high risk means high return? And so having your students consider that from an insurance standpoint. So there's a game connected to the Take Charge Today that it's if you've ever played the game of spoons, there's a great lesson with that. But having your students, do you have to pay a ton of money for high risk? Well, maybe not. Could you take liability on your car? Those types of things. So having them kind of process out those. Last slide, establish strategies for protection of personal identity. I like to start out, is your personal identity, is it your responsibility? Absolutely. So the Condom If You Can, it's a great gamification. So financialentertainment.org, you can have the students kind of be a detective as they process out, what are they, is this person actually telling the truth? The identity theft illustration, I like to have your students write down, have them write down a scenario where they're describing who they are, but maybe kind of throw some spin-offs and have them detect what two truths and a lie, those types of things. The Next Gen Personal Finance lesson is a great one. It has a ton of fraud-related conversation pieces and just what types of circumstances could you get into. I can't remember what Catch Me If I Can. So the middle, Catch Me If I Can, is a great personal identity story. Leonardo DiCaprio is an amazing artist. There's some swear words in it. I can't remember what it's rated, but great case study on helping your students actually catch different behaviors and kind of look at, man, maybe I need to not share my pin with my friend, those types of things. So helping your students see what information they should share, what they shouldn't share, who they should share their social security number with, those types of things. The bottom right, if you ever played the game Blind Man's Bluff, or this one's actually called Bands, and basically the students put something on their forehead and the other person has to describe it and the other person has to guess. And so as they're guessing, they're learning how to establish identity. Well, if you can establish identity, then you can actually prevent identity theft. And so that's a great, fun little activity, getting to identity and then having them, how would you protect it? Maybe you would cover half the card, or, those types of things. So, and lastly, I want to share with you some resources and tools. Here's a couple of the major curriculums that we covered today. tsinstitute.org is my website for our organization. Powtoons is what I referenced a little bit earlier. It's animation creation. So if your students are like, man, I'm tired of writing papers, I'm tired of doing presentations, can I make a cartoon and actually teach the stuff that I learned? Great way. Play Factile is a Jeopardy game, great way to reinforce while playing games, right? So if a couple of the last resources, if you're looking at just a great personal finance resource, Winning the Money Game in the bottom right is a great resource for you. The Bridges Out of Poverty is a great resource when trying to understand your students and the world that they're coming from. So if they're coming from a pretty poor home, awesome resource in just the different ways people think and the different paradigms we have in reference to future planning or wealth or just budgeting, money management in general. So because we're over, we're not gonna, and I don't see any questions at this point. I want to encourage you to send your questions my way. Quick reminder that if you do the survey, we will send out a $20 gift card for those of you that do the survey. So if you do that, please do so. In the next week or so, I'll check back in on those surveys, and then we'll choose a winner out of those. So, and lastly, I want to thank you again on behalf of Vicki Vermeer, myself, the Center for Economic Education at Dordt College, the Council, and TS Institute. It has been a great privilege this year, so the 2018-2019 school year. We've learned a ton. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, and with the standards in Iowa being required for graduation, I know this topic is top of mind for many people. So we're here to help, and we appreciate your time. Take care, everybody.